Hello everyone and welcome back to Whiskey Wednesday, part 2 of the Turntable Spirits again. Still got this rather fetching little box everything was sent in. Today we are talking about Bittersweet Symphony, and as a Mancunian, I haven't dressed up in a parka or anything, although it is just on that wall there. Maybe I should have gone a bit more on theme with it today, but I think this kind of cord shirt will do as well. We moved from last week's Paradise Funk whiskey into this Bittersweet Symphony, another blended whiskey with nothing added to it at 46%. But here we are talking about some significantly heavily sherried options, much so to the point that there is some virgin oak in this, but even the grain whiskey. Oh no, the grain whiskey is majority virgin oak, and then we've got a few other things that are all in sherry casks. But if I bring that into focus, we should be able to just get like a good idea of what all of that is. For those of you that may have trouble reading that, I will read out to you. Apologies for the screaming you may have heard in the background as someone has let their child loose somewhere on the street. 22% PX Puncheon Craigellachie, 21% Craigellachie in an Oloroso, but 21% Balmenach in a PX Puncheon, 19% North British in virgin oak, and 17% Blair Athol in virgin oak. Now, virgin oak fan, grain whiskey fan, old whiskey fan really, so this gets my pulse going pretty good. And then you've got Craigellachie in two different types of sherry, and Balmenach in Pedro Jimenez. Most of you may not have experienced Balmenach. It used to be owned by Diageo, it's now owned by Inverhouse. It's part of the whole Old Pulteney Annoch Balblair team. Currun gin is distilled at Balmenach. I suppose that's what it's more famous for want of a better phrase. But all the Balmenach I've tried over the years has always been refill bourbon, and it's always been quite tropical, quite fruity, a really nice whiskey, if I'm being like as honest as I can with you. But to see it here in Pedro Jimenez is quite interesting. So we're going to remove the lid. Slightly darker colour to the Paradise from last week. If you bring it in, it has that almost like Macallan orange thing about it. Well, I say Macallan, Glendronach, Dalmore, whatever you want to call it really, but just that nice sherried orange colour. We have a bit of a consistent theme with last week's one. The opening note on the Paradise Funk was all orange, as is this. But this one is leaning, go away fly. This one is leaning so much more into that darker, deeper orange liqueur, orange oil, orange skin sort of thing. I've left these kind of blind for myself. I've not tried them before at all. And on this, there's some pretty unusual things that I wasn't really expecting. There's a really nice black pepper note, which isn't something you normally get on the scent of a heavily sherried, mostly Speyside product, but the virgin oak in this must be bringing out some of those black pepper notes. There's some really nice apple, like red apple, green apple things, but because of the virgin oak influence again, and the sweetness of the sherry, they almost seem like drenched in caramel. Like really toffeed. This kind of reminds me on the nose a little bit of old Glendronach 15, for those of you that were around and buying whiskey when the original Glendronach 15s came out. Really does have that kind of honeyed maple, sticky apple thing to it. I will say for sherry cask whiskey, and I'm seeing this kind of less and less now, there's none of that kind of classic raisin thing. But here we're dealing with two whiskies that have been in Pedro Jimenez Puncheons, so they're huge barrels, the largest barrels that can be used in Scotch whisky to legally mature whisky. And we've also got an Oloroso Butts, so that again is like north of 450, 500 litres. So we've got some big barrels. And it's quite interesting that they haven't necessarily dominated the flavour with these raisin Christmas cake sort of chocolate notes. We are getting slightly more distillery character. That black pepper thing again could be related to Craigellachie. It's always had a savoury turn to it. And then just big kind of classic Speyside fruity notes, you know. I'm not finding any sort of Craigellachie unusualness in this. That might run through a little bit more when we taste it. Although having just said that, there is a slight whiff of like barrel char. Something a little bit, not sulphury, but something a little bit funky in the background. But a very inviting smell. Reminds me of opening, even though I've already said it doesn't smell like chocolate. The first time as a kid when you like wanted chocolate, but you ended up opening like your parents' chocolate liqueurs or your grandparents' chocolate liqueurs, and they were wrapped in those like weird tinfoil things and they had the brand names on them. You get the aroma of like gentle alcohol, but it's kind of wrapped in these very intense like Cointreau-y, Grand Marnier milk chocolate things as well. So that's a nice throwback. And I suppose that's quite Christmassy too, which is a classic sherry note. But let's taste it. Let's stop rambling on. I've always viewed silence as a good thing. Okay, there's a couple of things we need to talk about with this. Texturally. Ooh, it's heavy. This is a heavy old liquid. Honestly, when it fell into my mouth, it just dropped. Viscous. Not over the top in any way, like I'm not saying this is going to be the oiliest whiskey you'll ever try, but texturally it's already off to quite a good start. As you move past the texture, we have this nice arrival of like fruity and nutty things. There's like a hazelnutty, like macadamia dryness, and then you've got that classic kind of marinated fruit thing, raisin sultana. Throughout the middle, you begin to get a little bit of oak running through it. And I've never really understood what people have meant when they've said green oak. I've seen it on Macallan bottles and a couple of other descriptors on the back of it. I think I'm tasting that. There is a, it sounds so weird to say, like a youthful woodiness to it. I can't think of how else to phrase that. But essentially down the middle of your tongue you get this really nice oakiness, but it's not, again, it's not over the top like the previous bottle. It just kind of complements everything and it kind of backs off the milk chocolate a little bit. It almost emphasises the fruity and the nuttiness a bit more. Quite happy to eat my words because on the second taste it does develop into what you would call an extremely classic sherried Speyside whiskey. Almost Glenfarclas-like, almost Macallan-like. Loads of milk chocolate. And the longer you chew on it, it turns into dark chocolate. Fruit and nut again, hazelnut. A slight burnt thing. Which again, I'm not viewing as bad, it's just at the back, it's like here. Kind of at the where your jaw kind of connects. It's like, what would I describe that as? It's not sweet, it's not like burnt toffee or burnt caramel, because that doesn't sound that appealing anyway. But it's like, it's almost like flambéed stuff. Like, you know, again, back to like orange liqueurs and things like Grand Marnier, and like flambeing like something vaguely savoury in it. I really can't think of how to word that. Honestly, the amount of fruit flies I've killed today. Stay away from my whiskey. What is wrong with you? Go away. It's long, it's deep, And it's always nice from sherry matured products to get just that little bit extra out of them, because my main complaint with sherry whiskey has always been that really good quality sherry whiskey is fantastic and totally has its place, but it just really begins to taste like sherry. There are only a few distilleries that spring to mind where you really get distillery character when you use sherry cask whiskey. The classic ones of obviously peated whiskey shines through, Lagavulin, Springbank, Belmore. You always can kind of pick up both notes of distillery character and sherry at multiple ages. In the Speyside region, it really starts to sort of dull it down. I'm not a Glenfarclas fan, but you can taste that a whiskey is Glenfarclas. There is something about the viscosity of Glenfarclas at every percentage that it's bottled at, where you just kind of know what it is. Macallan, not to give Macallan props, but you just know when you're tasting Macallan. There's like just a natural quality to it. I feel to some distilleries like Craigellachie, sometimes Glendronach too, even currently in their modern range, maybe with the exception of the 18, they could just be any sherry thing because it's so barrel heavy and so colour heavy. Not deliberately, but it's always, you know, good casks are always an amazing thing. But I do feel that can just be lost. Like, I'm thinking about the Glenturret 12 that we reviewed a couple of weeks ago. Wonderful whiskey, super sherry orientated. I don't think I could tell you what Glenturret's style is like from that one bottle of whiskey. As a direct contrast in a positive sense, Ardnamurchan with that sherry maturation. Fabulous. But again, it's 50%, it's peated. So that debate stands out. But with this, I do think we've got a combination of both. You've got some really beautiful, decadent, rich sherry notes. I'm not getting a lot of the Craigellachie thing, but again, the Craigellachie could be the part that's adding this longer development. Once you get past the sweet notes, there are these burn, savoury, almost green, like fennel, licorice. They're kind of the same flavour, I suppose. Like flambéed herbs, some sort of savoury dish, you know. I don't want to name a specific meat because I think that sounds ridiculous, but it is moving in that direction. There's a lot going on for this whiskey. Like, none of them have ages. And with the percentages and stuff, I think I said this last time, you probably could have listed the average age of those barrels or something like that, because this is what I assume is a press pack. So I could have told you all that information. They wouldn't necessarily have to put it in the bottles. You could use this as a reference. But there's some decent length to this. Like, there must be some good mid-teenage liquid inside this. You know, old grain whiskey is so much cheaper than old malt whiskey. So, you know, grain is always the place you can bump up the age of your blend. But with the longevity of the finish on this, because it is not the darkest sherry cask whiskey you'll ever see, it's quite an average sherry cask colour. Again, not a bad thing. But I taste no grain. Like, I don't get much grain on the taste of this thing. It is all malt, and it's all chewier and thicker and richer, outside of being in sherry barrels. That's really good. If you're a blended whiskey fan and you've tried most things from Compass Box, or you've tried that new Ardre release from Edrington, which I still need to buy and review because I got to try it and I really quite liked it, you need to try this. If you genuinely like Johnny Walker Black Label like I do, or Johnny Green, and you just want, in all honesty, what I'd say would be the next level, this is it. Loads of sherry. There's no smoke in it as such, but there are things in here which I still can't really put my finger on, which is never a bad thing in the whiskey world. That's delicious. Bittersweet Symphony gets an 8.5 from me. That is... Have I tried many blends this year? I'm looking at a couple of bottles over there which I still need to review. One of them is a blend. Oh, and the Ardre bottle too, because I need to buy one. So there are at least 2 of the blends that I'm going to try and review this year. The Ardre might come a bit closer. The other one won't. It's nice whiskey, but it won't get close to that. I can't think of any of the blends I've really reviewed this year which get anywhere near to that. Like Black Bull, but I reviewed that last year. That's even bigger with this profile because there's more peated whiskey in it. It's 50%. It's all sherry matured. I think I gave that like an 8.5 as well, an 8.5 or an 8. Anyway, I'm rambling. This is a rambly video, I apologise. But overall, the key components are that Turntable Bittersweet Symphony gets an 8.5 out of 10 from me. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next week for the finale. Cheers.